George Walton Lucas, Jr. is an American film director, screenwriter, producer, and entrepreneur. He founded Lucasfilm and led the company as chairman and chief executive before selling it to the Walt Disney Company on October 30, 2012. He is best known as the creator of the space opera franchise Star Wars and the archaeologist adventurer character Indiana Jones. Lucas is one of the American film industry's most financially successful filmmakers and has been nominated for 4 Academy Awards. Early life and education. George Lucas was born in Modesto, California, the son of Dorothy Eleanor Lucas and George Walton Lucas, Sr., who owned a stationery store. Lucas grew up in the Central Valley town of Modesto, and his early passion for cars and motor racing would eventually serve as inspiration for his USC student film 1:42.08, as well as his Oscar-nominated low-budget phenomenon, American Graffiti. Long before Lucas became obsessed with filmmaking, he wanted to be a race car driver, and he spent most of his high school years racing on the underground circuit at fairgrounds and hanging out at garages. On June 12, 1962, while driving his souped-up Autobianchi Bianchina, another driver broadsided him, flipping over his car, nearly killing him, causing him to lose interest in racing as a career. He attended Modesto Junior College, where he studied, amongst other subjects, anthropology, sociology and literature. He also began filming with an 8-ohm camera, including filming car races. At this time, Lucas and his friend John Plummer became interested in canyon cinema, screenings of underground, avant-garde 16-ohm filmmakers like Jordan Belson, Stan Brakhage and Bruce Conner. Lucas and Plummer also saw classic European films of the time, including Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless, Frana Section Noir Truffaut's Jules et Jim, and Federico Fellini's 8 1/2. That's when George really started exploring, Plummer said. Through his interest in autocross racing, Lucas met renowned cinematographer Haskell Wexler, another race enthusiast. Wexler, later to work with Lucas on several occasions, was impressed by Lucas' talent. George had a very good eye, and he thought visually, he recalled. Lucas then transferred to the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts. USC was one of the earliest universities to have a school devoted to motion picture film. During the years at USC, George Lucas shared a dorm room with Randall Kleiser. Along with classmates such as Walter Murch, Hal Barwood and John Milius, they became a clique of film students known as the Dirty Dozen. He also became good friends with fellow acclaimed student filmmaker and future Indiana Jones collaborator, Steven Spielberg. Lucas was deeply influenced by the filmic expression course taught at the school by filmmaker Lester Novros, which concentrated on the non-narrative elements of film form like color, light, movement, space, and time. Another inspiration was the Serbian montagist Slavo Vorkapic, a film theoretician who made stunning montage sequences for Hollywood studio features at MGM, RKO, and Paramount. Vorkapic taught the autonomous nature of the cinematic art form, emphasizing the unique dynamic quality of movement and kinetic energy inherent in motion pictures. Lucas saw many inspiring films in class, particularly the visual films coming out of the National Film Board of Canada like Arthur Lipsitz 21-87, the French-Canadian cameraman Jean-Claude Lebrec's Cine Copyright Marvar Copyright Rita Copyright 60 Cycles, the work of Norman McLaren, and the documentaries of Claude Jutras. Lucas fell madly in love with pure cinema and quickly became prolific at making 16-hour non-story non-character visual tone poems and Cine Copyright Marvar Copyright Rita Copyright with such titles as Look at Life, Herbie, 1:42.08, The Emperor, Anyone Lived in a Pretty Town, Filmmaker, and June 1867. He was passionate and interested in camera work and editing, defining himself as a filmmaker as opposed to being a director, and he loved making abstract visual films that created emotions purely through cinema. After graduating with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Film in 1967, he tried joining the United States Air Force as an officer, but he was immediately turned down because of his numerous speeding tickets. He was later drafted by the Army for military service in Vietnam, but he was exempted from service after medical tests showed he had diabetes, the disease that killed his paternal grandfather. In 1967, Lucas re-enrolled as a USC graduate student in film production. Working as a teaching instructor for a class of U.S. Navy students who were being taught documentary cinematography, Lucas directed the short film Electronic Labyrinth, THX 1138-4EB, which won first prize at the 1967 Euro 68 National Student Film Festival, and was later adapted into his first full-length feature film, THX 1138. Lucas was awarded a student scholarship by Warner Brothers to observe and work on the making of a film of his choosing. The film he chose was Finian's Rainbow, which was being directed by Francis Ford Coppola, who was revered among film school students of the time as a cinema graduate who had made it in Hollywood. In 1969, George Lucas was one of the camera operators on the classic Rolling Stones concert film Gimme Shelter. Film career: George Lucas is a filmmaker, with a film career dominated by writing and production. Aside from the 9 short films he made in the 1960s, he also directed 6 major features. His work from 1971 and 1977 as a writer-director, which established him as a major figure in Hollywood, consists of just 3 films, THX 1138, American Graffiti, and Star Wars. There was a 22-year hiatus between the original Star Wars film and his only other feature film directing credits, the 3 Star Wars prequels. Lucas acted as a writer and executive producer on another successful Hollywood film franchise, the Indiana Jones series. In addition, he established his own effects company, Industrial Light and Magic, to make the original Star Wars film. The company is now one of the most successful in the industry. Lucas co-founded the studio American Zoetrope with Coppola, whom he met during his internship at Warner Brothers, hoping to create a liberating environment for filmmakers to direct outside the perceived oppressive control of the Hollywood studio system. His first full-length feature film produced by the studio, THX 1138, was not a success. Lucas then created his own company, Lucasfilm, Limited, and directed American Graffiti. His newfound wealth and reputation enabled him to develop a story set in space. Even so, he encountered difficulties getting Star Wars made. It was only because Alan Ladd, Jr., at 20th Century Fox liked American Graffiti that he forced through a production and distribution deal for the film, which ended up restoring Fox to financial stability after a number of flops. Star Wars quickly became the highest-grossing film of all time, displaced 5 years later by Spielberg's E.T. The Extraterrestrial. After the success of American Graffiti and prior to the beginning of filming on Star Wars, Lucas was encouraged to renegotiate for a higher fee for writing and directing Star Wars than the $150,000 agreed. He declined to do so, instead negotiating for advantage in some of the as yet unspecified parts of his contract with Fox, in particular ownership of licensing and merchandising rights and contractual arrangements for sequels. The studio was unconcerned to relinquish these rights, as its last major attempt in the field, with the 1967 film, Dr. Dolittle, had proved a discouraging failure. Lucas exploited merchandising rights wisely, and Lucasfilm has earned hundreds of millions of dollars from licensed games, toys, and collectibles created for the franchise. Over the 2 decades after the first Star Wars film, Lucas worked extensively as a writer and/or producer, including the many Star Wars spin-offs made for film, TV, and other media. He acted as executive producer for the next 2 Star Wars films, commissioning Irvin Kershner to direct The Empire Strikes Back, and Richard Markin to direct Return of the Jedi, while receiving a story credit on the former and sharing a screenwriting credit with Lawrence Kasdan on the latter. Lucas also acted as executive producer and storywriter on all 4 of the Indiana Jones films, which he convinced his colleague and good friend, Steven Spielberg, to direct. Other notable projects as a producer or executive producer in this period include Kurosawa's Cage Musha, Lawrence Kasdan's Body Heat, Jim Henson's Labyrinth, Godfrey Reggio's Powakatsi, and the animated film The Land Before Time. There were also some less successful projects, however, including more American Graffiti, the ill-fated Howard the Duck, which was the biggest flop of his career. Willow. and Coppola's Tucker, The Man and His Dream. Between 1992 and 1996, Lucas served as executive producer for the television spin-off The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. In 1997, for the 20th anniversary of Star Wars, Lucas went back to his trilogy to enhance and add certain scenes using newly available digital technology. These new versions were released in theaters as the Star Wars Trilogy Special Edition. For DVD releases in 2004, the series received further revisions to make them congruent with the prequel trilogy. Besides the additions to the Star Wars franchise, in 2004 a George Lucas director's cut of THX 1138 was released, with the film recut and containing a number of CGI revisions. The animation studio Pixar was founded as the Graphics Group, one-third of the computer division of Lucasfilm. Pixar's early computer graphics research resulted in groundbreaking effects in films such as Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan and Young Sherlock Holmes, and the group was purchased in 1986 by Steve Jobs shortly after he left Apple after a power struggle at Apple Computer. Jobs paid $5 million to Lucas and put $5 million as capital into the company. The sale reflected Lucas' desire to stop the cash flow losses from his 7-year research projects associated with new entertainment technology tools, as well as his company's new focus on creating entertainment products rather than tools. A contributing factor was cash flow difficulties following Lucas' 1983 divorce concurrent with the sudden drop-off in revenues from Star Wars licenses following the release of Return of the Jedi. The sound-equipped system, THX Limited, was founded by Lucas and Tomlinson Holman. The company was formerly owned by Lucasfilm, and contains equipment for stereo, digital, and theatrical sound for films and music. Skywalker Sound and Industrial Light and Magic are the sound and visual effects subdivisions of Lucasfilm, while Lucasfilm Games, later renamed LucasArts, produces products for the gaming industry. In 1994, Lucas began work on the screenplay for the prequel Star Wars Episode I, The Phantom Menace, which would be the first film he had directed in over 2 decades. The Phantom Menace was released in 1999, beginning a new trilogy of Star Wars films. Lucas also directed Star Wars Episode II, Attack of the Clones and Star Wars Episode III, Revenge of the Sith, which were released in 2002 and 2005, respectively. Numerous critics consider these films inferior to the previously released Star Wars films, though the prequels were nevertheless huge box office successes in each of their respective releases. In 2008, he reteamed with Spielberg for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Lucas currently serves as executive producer for Star Wars, The Clone Wars, an animated television series on Cartoon Network, which was preceded by a feature film of the same name. He is also working on a so-far untitled Star Wars live-action series. For the film Red Tails, Lucas serves as storywriter and executive producer. He also took over direction of reshoots while director Anthony Hemingway worked on other projects. Lucas is working on his first musical, an untitled CGI project being produced at Skywalker Ranch. Kevin Munro is directing and David Barenboim wrote the screenplay. Semi-retirement. In January 2012, Lucas announced his retirement from producing large-scale blockbuster films and instead refocusing his career on smaller, independently budgeted features. He did not specify whether or not this would affect his involvement with the 5th installment of the Indiana Jones series. In June 2012, it was announced that producer Kathleen Kennedy, a long-term collaborator with Steven Spielberg and a producer of the Indiana Jones films, had been appointed as co-chair of Lucasfilm Limited. It was reported that Kennedy would work alongside Lucas, who would remain chief executive and serve as co-chairman for at least 1 year, after which he would succeed him as the company's sole leader. With the sale of Lucasfilm to Disney, Lucas is currently Disney's second-largest single shareholder after the estate of Steve Jobs. Philanthropy. Lucas has pledged to give half of his fortune to charity as part of an effort called the Giving Pledge led by Bill Gates and Warren Buffett to persuade America's richest individuals to donate their financial wealth to charities. George Lucas Educational Foundation. In 1991, The George Lucas Educational Foundation was founded as a non-profit operating foundation to celebrate and encourage innovation in schools. The foundation's content is available under the brand Edutopia, in an award-winning website, social media and via documentary films. Lucas, through his foundation, was one of the leading proponents of the E-rate program in the Universal Service Fund, which was enacted as part of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. On June 24, 2008, Lucas testified before the United States House of Representatives Subcommittee on Telecommunications and the Internet as the head of his foundation to advocate for a free wireless broadband educational network. Proceeds from the sale of Lucasfilm to Disney. In 2012, Lucas sold Lucasfilm to Disney for a reported sum of $4.05 billion. It was widely reported at the time that Lucas intends to give the majority of the proceeds from the sale to charity. A spokesperson for Lucasfilm told The Hollywood Reporter, "George Lucas has expressed his intention, in the event the deal closes, to donate the majority of the proceeds to his philanthropic endeavors." Lucas also spoke on the matter. "For 41 years, the majority of my time and money has been put into the company. As I start a new chapter in my life, it is gratifying that I have the opportunity to devote more time and resources to philanthropy." No announcement has yet been made as to which charities will receive the funds. Lucas Cultural Arts Museum. In June 2013, it was reported Lucas proposed establishing a museum, the Lucas Cultural Arts Museum, to be built on Crissy Field near the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, which would display Lucas' large collection of illustrations and pop art, with an estimated value of more than $1 billion. According to the report, Lucas offered to pay the estimated $300 million cost of constructing the museum, and would endow it with $400 million when it opens, and eventually add an additional $400 million to its endowment. However, after 4 years of fruitless talks with the Presidio Trust, this institution might now be destined for Chicago instead. The Chicago Tribune reported that Lucas had this to say when pressed on the topic: "The city of Chicago has enthusiastically welcomed me and I consider Chicago to be my second home," Lucas said in a statement. "I look forward to working with community leaders to see if Chicago can become home to the Lucas Cultural Arts Museum." The Office of Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel confirmed that talks between the two were ongoing. A potential lakefront site on museum campus in Chicago was proposed in May 2014. On June 24, 2014, the Chicago Sun-Times reported that Chicago was selected as the location, pending approval of the Chicago Plan Commission. Other initiatives: in 2005, Lucas gave $1 million to help build the Martin Luther King, Jr. National Memorial on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. To commemorate American civil rights leader Martin Luther King, Jr. on September 19, 2006, USC announced that George Lucas had donated $175 $180 million to his alma mater to expand the film school. It is the largest single donation to USC and the largest gift to a film school anywhere. Previous donations led to the already existing George Lucas Instructional Building and Marcia Lucas Post-Production Building. In 2013, Lucas and his wife Melody Hobson donated $25 million to the Chicago-based not-for-profit After School Matters, of which Hobson is the chair. Personal life. In 1969, Lucas married film editor Marcia Lou Griffin, who went on to win an Academy Award for her editing work on the original Star Wars film. They adopted a daughter, Amanda Lucas, in 1981, and divorced in 1983. Lucas subsequently adopted 2 more children as a single parent, daughter Katie Lucas, born in 1988, and son Jet Lucas, born in 1993. His 3 eldest children all appeared in the 3 Star Wars prequels, as did Lucas himself. Following his divorce, Lucas was in a relationship with singer Linda Ronstadt in the 1980s. Lucas began dating Melody Hobson, president of Ariel Investments and chair of DreamWorks Animation, in 2006. Lucas and Hobson announced their engagement in January 2013, and married on June 22, 2013, at Lucas's Skywalker Ranch in Marin County, California. They have one daughter together, Everest Hobson Lucas, who was born via gestational carrier in August 2013. Lucas was born and raised in a Methodist family. The religious and mythical themes in Star Wars were inspired by Lucas' interest in the writings of mythologist Joseph Campbell, and he would eventually come to identify strongly with Eastern religious philosophies he studied and incorporated into his films, which were a major inspiration for The Force. Lucas eventually came to state that his religion was Buddhist Methodist. He resides in Marin County. Lucas is a major collector of the American illustrator and painter Norman Rockwell. A collection of 57 Rockwell paintings and drawings owned by Lucas and fellow Rockwell collector and film director Steven Spielberg were displayed at the Smithsonian American Art Museum from July 2, 2010 to January 2, 2011 in an exhibition titled Telling Stories. Lucas has said that he is a fan of Seth MacFarlane's hit TV show Family Guy. MacFarlane has said that Lucasfilm was extremely helpful when the Family Guy crew wanted to parody their works. Filmography. Awards and honors. The American Film Institute awarded Lucas its Life Achievement Award on June 9, 2005. This was shortly after the release of Star Wars Episode III, Revenge of the Sith, about which he joked stating that, since he views the entire Star Wars series as one film, he could actually receive the award now that he had finally gone back and finished the movie. Lucas was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, Best Directing and Writing for American Graffiti, and Best Directing and Writing for Star Wars. He received the Academy's Irving G. Thalberg Award in 1991. He appeared at the 79th Academy Awards ceremony in 2007 with Steven Spielberg and Francis Ford Coppola to present the Best Director award to their friend Martin Scorsese. During the speech, Spielberg and Coppola talked about the joy of winning an Oscar, making fun of Lucas, who has not won a competitive Oscar. The Science Fiction Hall of Fame inducted Lucas in 2006, its second film, television, and media contributor, after Spielberg. The Discovery Channel named him one of the 100 Greatest Americans in September 2008. Lucas served as Grand Marshal for the Tournament of Roses parade and made the ceremonial coin toss at the Rose Bowl, New Year's Day 2007. In 2009, he was one of 13 California Hall of Fame inductees in the California Museum's year-long exhibit. In July 2013, Lucas was awarded the National Medal of Arts by President Barack Obama for his contributions to American cinema. See also, References, Explanatory Notes. Citations. Bibliography, George Lucas, Interviews University Press of Mississippi, Hien, Marcus. The Cinema of George Lucas, Publisher, Harry N. Abrams, Rinzler, J.W. The Making of Star Wars, The Definitive Story Behind the Original Film, Ebury Press, 2007. Rubin, Michael. Droid Maker, George Lucas and the Digital Revolution ISBN 0937404675, Silberman, Steve. Life After Darth Wired, November 2005, external links. George Lucas Biography at the Science Fiction and Fantasy Hall of Fame, George Lucas at the Internet Movie Database, George Lucas at AllMovie, George Lucas at the Notable Names Database, George Lucas at the Internet Speculative Fiction Database, George Lucas Biography at Lucasfilm.com, George Lucas at World of Business Ideas.